How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be installing this RK AutoWorks coolant overflow tank on this F90 M5. In the previous video, you saw that I did the spark plugs, and when we were doing that service, I did notice that the OEM coolant tank is cracked and leaking. This is a common failure point on a lot of these F90s, so rather than going with the recall and getting the same plastic overflow tank, we decided to go with RK AutoWorks, and it's a really high quality product. So I'm going to take you guys along as I install this. It should be a fairly simple process, and we'll get right to it. So as you can see, I have the hood popped open on the F90 just to let it cool down for a little bit. But taking a quick look at the OEM coolant overflow, you can see that the tank is leaking right here. This is a really common issue on these cars. I'm sure if you look at forums and whatnot, you can see that very low mileage F90s have this issue. There is an open recall. However, if you have downpipes or tune or stuff done to your car that might void the warranty, you can see why you want to avoid the dealership. I also believe that they put a plastic one back in, which can also fail again. So that's why we're going with the nice fully metal unit from RK AutoWorks. The failure rate is pretty much zero with these now, so they're really high quality and well worth the money. The only thing you have to use from the OEM coolant tank is going to be obviously the lines that go to it, as well as the coolant cap and the temp sensor. So you're gonna have to break this off and remove it and put it into the RK AutoWorks one, but I'll show you guys how to do that. So I'm gonna let the car cool off for a little bit longer, and then I'll take you guys right along for the installation. So now that the car has cooled down for some time, I'm going to remove the engine cover as well as the DME cover. Simply just pull straight up on these, and once they're released, you'll have more access to the overflow. So now that you have access to the coolant overflow tank, I removed the sensor that goes up top here. You just simply push down and unplug it, so I have it out of the way. There are two lines you're going to want to pop out of the clips and just guide to the side, as well as two T30 mounting bolts. So I'm going to loosen these up. Once these are loose, you can pull the tank and it'll come up. There's two grommets on the bottom that'll be free from. And then from there, I'm going to put a towel underneath, and I'm going to clamp these lines. There's three coolant lines, one right here, one down here, and then the last of them. It's a little hard to see, but it's right down there. Once you have this lifted up, you'll have more access to that one. So I'm going to clamp those off and then evacuate the coolant from the top, whatever I can get out of the tank, and put it into a container. And then I'll be able to swap in the new RK AutoWorks tank. So I'm going to get right to it. So I loosened the bolts, but I'm going to first extract the coolant with this little tool right here. There's a lot of different evacuation tools you can use to get the rest of the coolant out of the tank, but I'm going to use this. You can get it on Amazon, and all you do is just put the straw into the lid and pull out as much coolant as I can. So I'm going to go pull out as much coolant from the tank as I can before removal, clamp the lines, and then we'll start with the removal process.
What the fuck?
Okay, so as you just saw, I evacuated as much coolant from the reservoir as I can. And now I'm going to clamp off these three coolant lines, one down there, one right here, and one up here. So I'm gonna clamp those off and prepare to loosen them. Before I do that, I'm gonna also put a towel underneath to catch any residual coolant to make sure that I don't spill as much or limit as much spilling as possible. So I highly recommend you do that. But I'm gonna clamp these off. You could pull these clips off with just a pick tool. You're gonna lift up on all these tabs right here and right here, and that way you can free these loose. And now I'll just have to pull up and release the coolant tank. Okay, so as you can see, I put a towel down underneath these lines. I also put the cap back on to help with the coolant flow, to slow it down a little bit. So I'm just gonna use a pick tool and pop off these top two coolant lines, and then I'm going to pop up the last one here. But before I do that, I'm gonna use clamps to clamp these to limit the amount of coolant that spills out. So I'm gonna put these clamps on and then pull these lines off. So as you can see, I have these clamps right here. You can get a set off of Amazon, but they just pinch these lines. That way coolant doesn't leak out as much. So I'm going to clamp these 3 lines, and then we'll be able to release them and drain the coolant. So pretty simple. You just pinch and then slide this bracket up so that they hold. There's one. The other. So I'm gonna undo these first. The back one down here is a little bit tricky, but once I release these, I'll be able to maneuver the tank up a little bit more and then gain access to pinching that one and removing it. So to remove it, just gonna put a little pick tool, and don't be alarmed, coolant will spill out. You just don't want too much spilling out, so just pull it up and you'll see the tab is released here, and now all you have to do is just pull on this connector. But before I do that, I'm going to release this one as well. It's the same story. Just pull it up. There goes one line. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. There's the other line. So now that these 2 lines are free, I just have this one down here. It's going to be pretty hard to see, but I'm going to try my best to pull it up, and I'm going to throw a clamp kind of down here, and then same deal, just pull the little connector off, and then that will be the last step. So now you can see I have these 2 top ones disconnected. Now I just pulled up on the tank and I have this final bottom line or lower line crimped, and I'm going to remove the bracket. So for this one, you just want to be careful of the DME, and there still might be some residual coolant I could feel in here. So I'm just going to pull this up and get it out of the way. I have a rag underneath now, so I'm going to pop this just like the other ones. And now that I have the tank removed, I'm just going to dispose of whatever residual coolant we have in here and get ready to the reinstall. So as you can see in the previous clip, I pulled the lines off. So just getting a better look, this is the top one, there's one in the middle, and the one all the way at the bottom. They all have the same simple metal clip there, but I popped it off, didn't lose too much coolant, and you just want to swing it around the DME, make sure you don't get that wet. But I pulled the coolant off, or the coolant reservoir off, and now we're going to just remove the sensor and install it into the RK AutoWorks tank, and then it'll be reassembly. So I'm gonna show you guys how to get the sensor out. Okay, so now that I have the OEM tank out and drained, you can see the RK AutoWorks next to it looks a lot better, in my opinion at least. So we're gonna have to actually break this tank. It was already leaking, so it's kind of broken already, but I'm going to have to remove this sensor right here. As you can see, there's 2 notches, and those 2 notches you're gonna line up top or in this direction towards the logo for the RK AutoWorks one. But you're gonna have to use, I'm gonna use some snips and kind of break this plastic right here, and then get a pocket screwdriver and kind of just pull up on the sensor. So I'm gonna do that very carefully, making sure not to damage anything. And there's gonna be 2 O-rings on the sensor itself. And then once that pops out, you can just place it back in. So I'm gonna go do that right now.
We're freezing our bowls off, and Dom is breaking a factory coolant tank.
So now, as you can see, I removed the sensor, and I have to use a pick tool to get the O-rings out. But just a heads up, it is a pain to remove it, so try to break off these plastic pieces and not damage the sensor. So cut in the middle like I did and just pry, and then you want to be very gentle and pry it out. So now that the sensor's out, I'm going to put it in the new RK AutoWorks one as long as I get the O-rings, and then we'll be ready to reinstall this unit. So I just transferred the O-rings onto the sensor, and we're going to want to take the sensor now, and just to reiterate, it was in this orientation when I removed it. So there's no prongs on the RK AutoWorks one, but you want to have the prong side facing the RK AutoWorks logo. So I'm just going to gently push it back in. I'm going to use a pocket screwdriver just to gently push it all the way down. And once it's seated, then I can start with the reinstallation. So as you can see, I just pushed the sensor back in all the way. So you just want to use a pocket screwdriver or a plastic tool to push it all the way in, and then you'll hear a click when the O-ring seats. So now that this is all ready to go, we can go put it into the car. So I'll show you guys that process now. So now for the reinstallation, I'm going to make sure that all the tabs on the coolant sensor are pulled up, or you can actually leave them down and just press them on, but you want to ensure that they're on tightly. So I'm going to start in the reverse order, which is this lower portion right here. So I'm just going to slide the new tank into position. And it's hard to see here, but I'm going to just press this coolant line onto the barb. You should hear a click. So now you can see I have the tank in position. I already clipped this last bracket on, and I'm gonna push this one in and secure it. You'll hear an audible click once it goes over, and these clamps will cinch on. So you just wanna tug them and make sure that they're fully clipped on. But I'm gonna just put these hoses back in. This one's already secure. I'm just gonna do this bottom one and then this last top one, and then I can bolt it up and we'll be ready to add coolant and bleed the coolant system. So as you can see, I clipped the last plug-in. I removed the clamps just so that I had more space. So I clipped that one in. This one's clipped in and the last one's right here. So I'm just gonna push fit it on and you'll be able to hear an audible click. There you go. So that one's in, it's going nowhere. So now I'm just gonna line up the two T30s up top, bolt them in, and then I can remove the rest of the clamps and fill it up with coolant. So I'll do that now. So as you can see, I zip tied the fuel lines because there is no guide like the OEM one, but now they're out of the way. I plugged the sensor in. I ensured that all of the coolant hoses are clipped in and these two T30s are mounted. So now all that's left to do is to add some coolant. So as you can see, I just double checked and made sure everything is sealed and connected. I also zip tied these fuel lines together. So I added coolant, and now all we have to do is start the car up and do the bleeding procedure. So as you can see here, I threw on the engine covers, and you can see it looks really good. Right now it's still bleeding, so I didn't put the cap on yet. And we're waiting to get the operating temperature to fulfill the bleeding process. But honestly, it seems to work completely. So not only did it add some liability to the vehicle, but it looks sweet. So I highly recommend getting the RK AutoWorks coolant expansion tank. It's a well worth it mod in my opinion. And I'm sure let it run through the bleed cycle and admire what it looks like. So as you guys can see, all the engine covers are on. I put the coolant cap back on. The arrow doesn't quite line up, but that's all right. It's tight and it's not leaking. And you can see how good this RK AutoWorks coolant reservoir looks. Looks really, really good in the engine bay, and also provides the peace of mind. So I had the car heat up to operating temperature, but there also is a pedal dance that you can do. So I'm gonna show you guys how to put the car in diagnostic mode and bleed the rest of the coolant. So now we're gonna do the bleeding procedure. So if you have a loud car, just a disclaimer here, do it during the day so your neighbors don't want to kill you, because it's going to rev the car by itself with the computer. But other than that, you should be good. So without further ado, you're going to want to make sure the hood's closed, and you're going to press the start stop button 3 times very quickly. And then you'll see it enters diagnostic mode. So from here, you want to put your foot on the gas for 15 seconds. You'll hear things under the hood, and at that point you can remove your foot off the gas and start the car. And then you don't want to touch anything, and you want to let it do its procedure. It'll it'll start revving occasionally, but this should take about 11 minutes. So I'm just gonna let the car idle for 15 minutes roughly and let it go through its procedure. So as you can see, it's holding the revs. I'm not touching anything. And this is just the coolant bleeding, or the BMW doing its own process. So just allow this to happen, and it's gonna continue to do some short revs to allow the coolant to bleed. So as you can see, it's all the way up to 3K. So I'm gonna let this run through its process, probably another 10 more minutes. And after that, I'll be able to double check the coolant levels and we'll be good to go. So now that the car is fully bled, you can see the RK AutoWorks tank. It looks so much better, and it will also provide a peace of mind in terms of reliability for this car. The install was fairly easy, and I highly recommend that you get one of these if you have a F90 M5. Overall, I hope this was a very useful video for you guys if you're going to perform the service yourself. As always, be sure to comment if you guys have any questions or suggestions on future videos. Also, I really appreciate if you drop a like, it really helps me. And don't forget to subscribe if you like the content. There's going to be plenty more in the future, especially with this car and other cars that I work on. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.